Welcome back, everyone. Breaking news. Lewis Hamilton disqualified from the Chinese GP. Charles Leclerc has also been disqualified, and I believe Pierre Gasly has also been disqualified. This is not the best start for the year for Ferrari. It is not the best start indeed. So we want to get into this to understand what really happened. Why did he get disqualified? But before we can do that, certain things we need to address after the Chinese GP. We've seen in the Chinese GP, the Ferrari cars swapped positions because Lewis was not fast enough. And Charles Leclerc, despite having a damaged front wing, he was somehow faster than Lewis. His pace was really, really good. It was encouraging. Now, Lewis made the suggestion to Ferrari that I'm going to swap with Charles because I'm slow at the moment. So Lewis made the suggestion. It is well known that Lewis is the one who made that suggestion. But the media still love to hate. They still love to hate and lie on Lewis. This is written by Mail Sport, the Mail Online. And if you're wondering who it's written by, we got that as well. There it is. This article is written by Jonathan McEvoy. He's a big Lewis Hamilton hater, and he has a racial bias. He does have a racial bias, so he's so bad. Lewis actually doesn't answer questions from this guy. Whenever Lewis is doing press events, media events, just in F1, he doesn't speak with this guy. And I think it's because this guy lacks all integrity. He knew better, but he still had to write. Lewis clashes with Ferrari engineer and is made to swap place with Charles Leclerc in miserable Chinese GP. They will write anything to get a headline. They would write anything to get a headline. Their loyalties are up for sale. And thankfully, people are correcting him. Why is it all you ever do is lie? Hamilton was accidentally hit by Leclerc and Hamilton made a suggestion to swap. He wasn't made to swap. He wasn't forced to swap. This is what we're trying to say, is that the media in F1, they have a racial bias. They do constantly lie on Lewis Hamilton's name, and they lie consciously. It is not mistake. They do it consistently. They write disgusting articles all to drag attention and to lie on Lewis Hamilton's name. People are actually tagging the Jonathan McEvoy. This is simply a pack of lies. We can hear the radio. It was Lewis who said to swap with Charles. See? So people are pointing it out. So when I make videos on this channel talking about how Lewis experienced racism, racial bias in F1, and people say Lewis is too famous to experience racism, Lewis has too many fans to experience racism. No, we have proof that the media generally hates him. And this media is British, by the way. I don't see it. Where's the British bias? Where's the British bias that I've heard so much about? We can't find the British bias. Not just that, Fred Vasseur also confirmed that the first call came from Lewis. He proposed to swap. You have to listen to the full story. Fred spoke. Thankfully, Fred spoke. Fred is not afraid to speak. Fred said not really, because the first call came from Lewis. And Fred said this after the person who was asking him, another media personnel, asked him a very strategical question, and they knew better that this wasn't the situation, but they asked Fred, you had to tell the drivers to swap position, and he wasn't happy. Lewis, have you had any words with him? So it's not just one media personnel. They all like to lie on Lewis Hamilton's name.
Had to tell the drivers to swap positions, and he wasn't too happy, Lewis Hamilton. I don't know if you've had a word with him.
Not really, because the first call came from Lewis. He proposed to swap, but you have to listen to the full story. Lewis proposed to swap, and then he picked up a little bit the pace, and he swapped, and it's not an issue at all.
The person who's asking this question, they knew it was Lewis who proposed to swap. They have the team radios. The media has all the data they need to know the truth. They still love to create a narrative. Lewis is angry, the angry black man. They still love to create a narrative, and that narrative is usually driven around lies. Huge amount of lies, unfortunately. So, both Ferraris at risk of disqualification. The skid rear of Lewis Hamilton's car number 44, was checked. The rearmost skid was measured according to the team's legality statements or documents submitted. Measurements were taken along with the stiffness compliant area at 3 different points. The recorded measurements were 8.6 millimeters, car center line 8.5 millimeters. This is less than the 9 millimeter minimum thickness required by the TR article. 3.5.9. I'm referring to this matter to the stewards for their consideration. Joe Burra, the FIA Formula One technical delegate. So yes, that's one of the reasons why Lewis was being investigated. But both Ferrari cars got disqualified. Leclerc's disqualification came with different reasoning, slightly different reasoning. Car 16, alleged breach of Article 4.1, non-compliant with weight regulation. So it might have been due to the same thing, but slightly different reasoning, because Leclerc did, hit his front wing, chunk of his front wing missing in. So how did they weigh the car in that scenario? Well, they figured it out. And I believe both cars were underweight. And perhaps due to the same thing, the setup change that they made, it probably just made the car, too low. And due to that, if that was indeed the case, well, the funny thing is Lewis, yesterday, the car was working perfectly well for him in the sprint qualifying. It was working better than perfect. The way he was gapping Oscar Piastri, who won the race today, the way Lewis was gapping Oscar on a car that was set up differently. Why did they change the setup? No idea. Ferrari just does Ferrari stuff. I mean, they clearly made a wrong mistake, and they've been fucking up since the first race. The first race, it was a pit stop miss. They missed the perfect pit stop, and they did it with both drivers. In this race, they fucked up the cars, and the cars got disqualified due to that. These are not driver errors. These are not driver mistakes. The drivers are doing as they're supposed to. Now the team has to get their shit in order. So Hamilton, Leclerc, and Gasly, to the stewards, disqualified, unfortunately. Now, we cannot pretend like this never happened at Mercedes. This did happen at Mercedes. I believe it was last year in 2024, or was it 2023? I can't remember. It might have been 2023, but nevertheless, Lewis was disqualified. And guess what? Charles were disqualified as well, and they were in different cars. But what was suspicious at the time is that, the FIA didn't check all the cars. And a big discussion that took place online is that, what if they did check all the cars? Would there be other vehicles that could have also been disqualified? Carlos got his first points for Williams, thanks to Ferrari. The irony, I'm in full disbelief. Lewis Hamilton becomes the first driver in history to secure a win and also be disqualified in the same race weekend. That is absurd. The only positive I can take out of this is that at least they're getting these terrible mistakes out the way before we get into the season properly. It's the first two major mistakes. The man got pole on the sprint, man got win on the sprint. And even in this race, his start was phenomenal. He got ahead of Verstappen. Leclerc also managed to jump Verstappen. Verstappen came at them towards the end of the race. Towards the end of the race, that's where Verstappen came at them. And apparently Lewis was being told to lift and coast quite a bit. So I think there wasn't just a lot of management in terms of tires, but there must have been a lot of management in terms of fuel also. You have to consider that as well. You got to remember, Russell did get disqualified last year because not enough fuel. The car was under fuel. He did get disqualified. So fuel is always a factor. You need to make sure that those cars, they finish with the right amount of fuel. Even Thanos is posting about it. McCoy or McEvoy is a racist. Yes, I will have to admit that. This is not the first time he's posted about Lewis. He's always writing articles about Lewis to discredit Lewis, to undermine Lewis, to write lies about Lewis. And that is something that I just can't stand with. Telling lies on people, writing lies about people, I just cannot agree with that. And it's being done clearly in front of us. And when we call it out and we say, he doesn't do this to other drivers. We don't see other drivers being treated like this. We see the way they treat Lewis, how he's held to a different standard. We see the way they treat Yuki, he's held to a different standard. You cannot deny Yuki has experienced racism in this sport. You remember when Yuki was swearing on the radio quite a bit? He wasn't the only one who sweared on the radio. He wasn't the only one who get upset on the radio. But when a black driver does it, or when an Asian driver does it, for some reason, the media seems to think that no one else behaves the same way on their radio. No one else swears, no one else get upset, no one else raise their voice or get angry. Some drivers in the sport are treated a little bit different. I mean, just look at the current situation with Yuki. He's not even able to drive that Red Bull, because our suspicion is that it is because of racism reason. why they're not allowing him to drive that car. Now, I know you might say, well, they allowed Alex Albon to drive that car, and Alex Albon is Asian. So that is a fair argument. Of course, that is a fair argument. And also, the relationship between Honda and Red Bull isn't exactly going particularly well, which is a huge surprise because without Honda engine, Red Bull would still be a midfield car. But nevertheless, just the way Red Bull do their business, I don't think enough appreciation have been given to Honda, and that's so typical of Honda. They never receive full credit when they do the work, but they do receive full blame, however, when they underperform. Back in the days when they were supplying McLarens with engines, Alonso was there. Alonso basically called their engine GP2 engine. And they never forgot that, by the way. They never forget that. And ironically, it is Honda and Aston Martin who's now teaming up. And that's where Alonso is. But as we're suspicious again, we don't believe Alonso will be in that seat for too long. Here is Sid saying what we all think, and it's true, of course. I hate these F1 journalists, hate them all. And it's true, because they continuously mislead the public. They continuously love to mislead the public. And it's unfair. If you're wondering why Charles was faster than Lewis today, well, don't forget, I said this, I wrote this in this tweet, that, Max Verstappen brake checked Lewis in Saudi Arabia 21. Lewis' front wing was damaged. Lewis still overtook him and won that race. Lewis was still faster in that race, even after getting his front wing destroyed. So, getting your front wing destroyed, it doesn't always mean that you'll slow down. If anything, based on history, it's actually proven that Leclerc goes faster when he's got a damaged front wing. And that's just a huge amount of irony. An even bigger irony is that Max Verstappen, I don't think Liam has any points. I don't think so. But Max Verstappen, Red Bull, or the Red Bull constructors, 36 points. Ferrari was 35 points, but now they got disqualified, so it's not that much anymore. And that is Ferrari versus Red Bull. Because like I said, the Ferrari drivers are doing what they're supposed to do, but Ferrari, the team, keeps on fucking up. I even wrote, keep in mind, Max basically doesn't have a teammate. Now, people might say it's the Ferrari drivers who are underperforming. No, Ferrari fucked up in Australia, fucked up their pit stop. Ferrari also fucked up in this race. Even before they got disqualified, that car wasn't on pace properly. Something about that car changed over the weekend, because the car we saw in the sprint, even 20 laps of the sprint, a very different car compared to what we saw in the first 20 laps of the real race. And if you're going to say, well, it performs different on low fuel, yeah, Verstappen was catching Leclerc on low fuel and overtook him. Same tires, by the way. So there's a lot that's going on, but for sure, it is Ferrari who's underperforming the most and letting their drivers down. And that is a big shame. That is honestly a big shame. There's also rumors that Yuki Tsunoda was asked whether he would agree to swap place with Liam Lawson in Suzuki. He replied, yeah, 100%. The Red Bull car is faster. I hope they do this. I want to make another video about this specifically, because I think that would be huge. Yuki is a Japanese driver. The next race is in Japan in 2 weeks. That would be historic. And if he performs well, Liam, you can say goodbye to your fucking seat, mate. You've been given a chance to race. It's one thing to be 5/10 away from Max, 6/10 away from Max, but still, be in the top 10, but Lawson is not able to work that car as is required. George Russell is having a secretly really good race, both race, he's what? He's probably fourth. I believe he's fourth or third in the championship. Or is it, I can't even remember, but he's super close to Max in the championship, and that's a huge positive because George is being super consistent right now. Most front rows since Brazil 2024, George Russell 4, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri 3, Carlos Sainz, Max Verstappen 1. Keep in mind, George Carr is not on the level with those McLarens. But because George is super consistent, whenever those McLaren make a mistake, he will be there to pick up the pieces and pick up the win, similar to what he did in Austria last year. Now, we've said a lot in this video. I honestly considered making a live stream, but you know what I just said to myself? You know what? We'll just go along with just a normal video. But this is being reported in the media quite a lot. Red Bull may swap Liam and Tsunoda. Why would they do this at this time? Because Lawson is performing so terribly. At this moment, they have nothing to lose, and if they're forced to put Yuki in that car, that would be hilarious because they've tried to avoid putting Yuki in the car. They've always avoided it. And don't get me wrong, me personally, I don't want Yuki to go in that car because I believe that car only works for one person, that's Max. Now, people might say the car is the car. Well, the car is built to be suited towards Max, whether or not you like it or not. Alex Albon said, as the season goes on, if Max wants his car to be sharper and sharper, the car becomes sharper and sharper. So Max has a huge influence on that car, and I don't understand why people pretend as if we don't see it, like it's not obvious. McLaren also has a sharp front-end car, but they've proven to be able to build a sharp front-end car that works for both drivers. So why can't Red Bull build a fast front-end car, sharp at the front end, but it works for both drivers? Because it's not just about it being sharp at the front end. There's a lot of other nuances that goes into the car, and I'm guessing Max Verstappen make those demands. And if him and the team agree that it would make him faster in the car, well, what do you think the team would prioritize? Max Verstappen opinion, Max Verstappen input, or his teammates? They prioritize Max because, yeah, when he gets the car the way he wants, he does go faster. But that's because he gets the car the way he wants. I'm going to talk about that in the next video. Red Bull may swap their drivers. Even though I don't want to see Tsunoda in that car, I would still like to see it happen, which is just a strange opinion, but I'm just telling you the facts. But yeah, Lewis being disqualified is just Lewis and Charles being disqualified. Both Ferrari cars, second race of the season. Listen, this cannot happen again. This cannot happen again. The mistakes that they're making this year, particularly the mistakes that they made, you know, their strategy today was a lot better, by the way. Let me give them credit where credit is due. Their strategy was definitely a lot better, but they just had to fuck up on something else. And now it's because of the car planks were too worn down. So, you know, Leclerc was a weight issue. Lewis Hamilton was that the planks were too worn down. The issues could be similar. They're not too dissimilar, because if the plank is worn down, that also means that it weighs less. The overall car weighs less. So my goodness, I need to know what you think about this. You know, the fact that Ferrari is having an abysmal start to the year, despite actually making a relatively good car. The car is competitive. The car is good. The car is not great. It's clearly not the fastest car on the grid, but the car definitely does have more potential to be developed long term. And Lewis definitely believes that, you know, that the car does have more potential to be developed more long term. But the changes they make, you know, for the race on Sunday, they did not work. And it's similar to Australia. The changes they made for that race did not work. So something's going on with Ferrari, the team, and something's going on with the Ferrari cars. The Ferrari drivers, I can't criticize them because they're doing what they're supposed to do. They haven't made any major mistakes. They haven't. The drivers are actually been trying to get the most out of their cars individually as much as possible. I think the Ferrari car has great potential, but because this car is still such a new car for them, you know, they're still trying to figure out how to really make it faster, how to get it into the ideal window. But I feel as if in the sprint they got a taste of what's possible, and they really try to push the boundaries with that for the race. And instead, they should have just you know, been a bit more conservative in that, because something was working for Lewis in that sprint race, and in the real race, something clearly wasn't working. And Lewis is usually relatively good on this track. I was wondering after the collision, the contact that he made with Charles Leclerc, could that did some sort of minor damage to the rear end of his car, because he was saying he doesn't have the rear end, didn't have confidence in the rear end. And you know, Lewis, he loves a car that it gives him the confidence in the rear end, because he's super aggressive, you know, but he loves a stable rear end where he can really drive that car on rails. But he just didn't have the confidence anymore. I take away nothing from Lewis. I take away nothing from Charles, you know. It's just unfortunate that this is what it is. McLaren 1 and 2, Ferrari 1 and 2 disqualification. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. We don't know where Ferrari's going to go with all of this long term. That is for sure. You know, we really don't know. We just have to figure it out as the season goes along. But I still want to wait until around, you know, the first 5 to 10 race to really understand where these teams are and where these teams are going to go. But it's one thing that's still obvious and clear. This is what I said in my most recent videos. McLaren is the fastest car. So when, when Lando wasn't performing, don't blame it on the car, because it is clear to everyone that car is the fastest car. I believe Ferrari made a statement. Let's check out Ferrari's statement quickly, and we will end this video. But you got to let me know what you think. Terrible start for the year for Lewis, terrible start for the year for Ferrari. And it's just crazy that he also got a win on a pole position. Ferrari's statement said, following the FIA post-race scrutineering, both our cars were found not to be conformed to the regulations for different reasons. For different reasons. Charles' car was found to be underweight by 1 kilogram. Lewis Hamilton's car, rearward skid rear, was found to be 0.5 millimeters below the limit. These are fine margins, but nevertheless, this is Formula One. I understand. Charles was on a one-stop strategy today, and this meant his tires were very high, causing the car to be underweight. Does that make any sense? So Charles was on a one-stop strategy today, and this meant his tires were very high, causing the car to be underweight. His tire wear was really high. Okay, but if you're going to disqualify a team, is that based on tire wear? Is that really fair to disqualify a team because they use too much of their tires? I thought that was part of the sport. But it was a similar conversation when George was disqualified last year. It was a similar conversation. George was on, was he on a one stop, and because of that he might have used up too much tire. That's crazy. That shouldn't be a reason to disqualify cars. I'm just being honest. That should not be a reason to disqualify cars. Because if you're trying to promote multiple stops, then different story. Well, anyway, they say that caused the car to be underweight. With regards to Lewis' skid rear, Ferrari said, and I quote, "We misjudged the consumption by a small margin. There were no intentions to gain any advantage. We will learn from what happened today and make sure we don't make the same mistakes again." Clearly, it's not the way we wanted to end our Chinese GP weekend, neither for ourselves nor for our fans who support us, whose supports for us is unwavering. I don't know if you can get disqualified, from a race because you used up too much of your tires, so the entire car is a little bit underweight. That is so crazy. That is so crazy. If that is true, that is so crazy. But if they're gonna make these mistakes, make them right now. So we shouldn't be having this mistake going forward. And it's not like Ferrari did not make this mistake last year in no, was it 2023 when Leclerc was disqualified? It was Ferrari, wasn't it? And I believe that was a plank issue. So I don't know, these mistakes are rare. These mistakes are rare, but because of how the FIA judges the cars, they don't check all the cars. They don't check all the cars. I remember this back in, was it 2023? When Lewis and Charles got disqualified, they said they didn't check all the cars. But the ones they did check got disqualified. So I don't know if that's the same situation. This is so funny. This is absolutely funny. But this is not a new video. This is an older video. This is an older video with Lewis in a Mercedes shirt. Might have took you a moment to realize. Lewis in a Mercedes shirt. Listen, we're going to go ahead and end this video right now. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe to see more. Leave a like, leave a comment. Looking forward to the Japanese GP. A couple of weeks of break might be good. Yeah, a couple of weeks of break might be good for all of us. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Peace.